The dawn comes as the sun rises. It is when one gets that first glimpse of light in the sky after a long night as the sun goes up. But before it is dawn, the moon is what we see in the sky. Within this video, the moon god, or should I say the moon devil, will be exposed. But first, cue up that intro.
He moves from the void century. I don't know. It was on their side, yeah, they play pretend. The moon devil against the sun god. Doesn't that mean the celestial dragons are false gods? I guess you could say that, but I don't know. I'm just trying to stay 10 toes. Not like IMU, cause they trade your boy.
The Dawn, a reference made numerous times while we were still in Wano. The dawn being the rise of the rightful ruling party, and this dawn also being the fall of the tyrannical ruler who wasn't supposed to be in that position. I believe that within the story of One Piece, we continue to see this situation. The Straw Hats going to an island that needs to be liberated from a party that has taken complete control. We've seen it on Shell Island with Captain Morgan. We've seen it on Konomi Island with Arlong. We've seen it in Alabasta with Crocodile. We've seen it in Dressrosa with Doflamingo. And most recently, we have seen it in Wano with Kaido and Orochi. In my opinion, Oda is foreshadowing the situation that will occur with the Straw Hats against IMU and the Gorosei. Like I mentioned before, the dawn has been mentioned within the Wano arc numerous amounts of times. Speaking of the moment that Kaido and Orochi meet their doom, the first reference we see in the story of this dawn was in chapter 809 by Pedro and Nekamamushi, which the Kozuki clan in the Minks have been waiting for. The earliest known reference was from Nefertari Lily, who mentioned this in a letter sent to Alabasta before her disappearance.
Like, where did she go though?
I don't know exactly, but I do have an idea where she could have gone and what exactly happened to her. But that will be mentioned in a future video, so subscribe and turn post notifications on so you get notified on when it comes out. While we are on the topic of the letter, in chapter 1084, IMU and the Gorosei get upset about this letter and the name written on it. We find out that Vivi's family is a part of the D clan, whom as we know are the enemies of the gods. These gods, referring to IMU, the Gorosei, and the families that join the celestial dragons. These families had a connection to Joy Boy and the ancient kingdom, one that we have yet to find out, but I believe that they might have betrayed Joy Boy for their own greed, which was to be world nobles, which would allow them to have diplomatic immunity. This is the privilege one gets being exempted from laws that apply to regular citizens, basically making them the same as pirates, but they don't suffer any repercussions. Now, with us on the topic of the world nobles and the deception that they potentially enacted upon Joy Boy and the ancient kingdom, IMU comes to mind as the ring leader, the one whom conspired against Joy Boy. Throughout the years, I have been wondering where this ancient kingdom could have been located at. Was it at God Valley? Nah. Was it on the moon? Maybe. Did they sail the seas together? I think we're getting somewhere. But where exactly could it have been? Because I know that's not correct. But a thought just crossed my mind. What if the ancient kingdom was originally on Mary Joyce? We know of one race whom inhabited the Red Line, that being the Lunarians, whom had been hunted down and killed by the world government. I believe they were hunted down because they sided with the ancient kingdom instead of with the world government, an eternal grudge held by IMU on the race. As we see from King during the Kaido flashback, him and Kaido talk about Joy Boy as if they know he is a real person. So I believe the world government targets races that not only have connections to Joy Boy, but that also never lost the history of Joy Boy. We've seen this in Wano with them having a balloon that resembles Luffy's Gear 4th transformation. or as we know now, the Gear 5th transformation. With this point being made, perhaps Joy Boy and the kingdom were inhabiting the area as well. IMU inserting his or her dominance and victory by taking the highest point in the world, the red line, looking down upon every being that lives on the planet. The highest point being on his or her throne, or as we know, the empty throne. We have no backstory on any of these individuals that look to have a cleansing of the world, but I believe this is the case. Now, with this said, we'll get to the main point of this video. Who is IMU, and what powers does he or she have? The individual known as IMU, I believe, has 4 different powers, due to IMU being the opposite of Nika. While Nika is the sun god, IMU perhaps is the moon devil. 4 powers are associated with IMU due to Luffy's Nika fruit having 3 different abilities. Nika's abilities being the use of fire, a rubber body, which allows him to make his surroundings have the properties of rubber as well, and also the freedom to do what he wants with his imagination. The 4 abilities I believe IMU will have are the control of water, the control of oxygen, control over the moon, and the control of darkness. First, I will explain to you the reason I give IMU the moniker, the Moon Devil. In chapter 1064, IMU uses an ability to attack Cobra and also Sabo. If you look at the attack itself, it resembles that of a devil's tail. Shout out to 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚑𝚝 for bringing this point to light. Get it? Make sure you all go check out his video on IMU. The ability used resembles that of an arrow. If someone or something is shrouded in darkness, it could be seen as evil or ungodly. The reason I believe IMU will have these 4 abilities is due to them being the counters to the abilities of Nika, and also the abilities that are associated with the moon. Ability 1, the Moon Man. In chapter 1060, we see IMU use the Mother Flame that was created by Vegapunk, which caused the destruction of the Lucia kingdom. The tech utilized a large beam of light that seemed to come from above the clouds. IMU was the individual that targeted Lelouchia, and the beam attacked right where Im wanted it to. I believe that the Mother Flame is an artificial moon, and also I believe that it is an ancient weapon that IMU requested Vegapunk to make. I believe that the attack that we see is a concentration of the moon's light, as if it was using the sun's light to focus fire, just as one might do when using a magnifying glass when the sun's out to try and create a small light that's concentrated from the sun. We have yet to actually see this invention of Vegapunk's, but just like Pluton and Neptune, there must be an attribute from a person in order to control this invention. I believe that IMU tricked one of the Vegapunks into creating an ancient weapon because they could not find any of the ancient weapons for themselves after all of this time. The ancient weapons being weapons that the ancient kingdom might have created for the war against IMU. Ability 2, Oxygen Control. The ability of Oxygen is one that is unique and is similar to the Paramecia ability of Fujitori's. But instead of using the force of gravity, IMU utilizing the element of oxygen. Oxygen is an ability that seems like it wouldn't have any effect on someone like the sun god, but it actually does, and actually would be a great ability against any foe. With the ability of the sun god utilizing fire and also rubber, oxygen is a lethal ability that could change the tides of the fight between Nika and IMU. This is due to oxygen affecting rubber in different ways, dependent on the temperature of the rubber. I believe that IMU figuring out the right amount of oxygen to make Luffy's rubber abilities inactive will be the greatest test for our protagonist. As we know, Luffy's different gears change his body temperature. Gear 2nd, he has smoke coming off of his body and his body turns pinkish, signaling a change in temperature. It will truly be a chess match with IMU's abilities of oxygen. If Luffy controls his temperature throughout each gear, he could never be affected by this ability. but if IMU gets the right amount of oxygen into Luffy, this will render his rubber useless, not being able to bounce back and taking damage each attack, even without Haki. Reason being that over-oxidization could cause the rubber to have a different absorption curve. This makes me think that the original sun god could change the color of his flames just as we saw Sanji do with his Ifrit Janbei. As we know, with fire, oxygen is a main factor as to why the fire burns either hotter or larger. So I'm pretty sure IMU probably used the oxygen and took the oxygen away completely so his fire could not burn anymore and the body temperature could not be changed, because probably that fire that burns on top of his head is the reason why his body temperature is able to change. Ability 3, Control of Darkness. Before dawn, the world is at its darkest point. There's very little to no sunlight. The only thing in sight is the moon, which is why I believe IMU controls the power of darkness. As we see in each panel that IMU is in, all we see are Mu's eyes in a deep black outfit. In my opinion, the IMU we see is not the true IMU. This is just a clone, or perhaps a shadow, sent to the throne room, just like Moria had done way back in Thriller Bark. And this was Moria after he lost to Kaido, sending his shadow to fight for him instead of doing so himself. In my opinion, from the panels, IMU doesn't look three-dimensional, but instead looks 2D, or two-dimensional, which wouldn't be a characteristic of a person, would it? I believe that IMU has gotten lazy after these 800 years and doesn't bother to show themselves unless they truly need to. Just like Moria had gotten, which we see in Thriller Bark. This ability of darkness has a counter to the sun god's ability of shining a bright white light, dimming the sun god's light because only stars can shine in the darkness, or the dark skies, similar to what we saw with Ace against Blackbeard. Ace's sun gets snuffed out by the darkness of a void. I believe that the fight against Blackbeard and Ace was a foreshadowing of how IMU and Luffy's fight might be like. Darkness is all around space, and the sun's rays are the only thing shining within it. But could the sun shine bright enough to not be put out? I believe it didn't in the past, but this time around I believe it truly will. But that's something we'll have to witness for ourselves. Ability 4, Control of Water, primarily waves. The moon and water are connected. Wherever the moon is, the waves will follow. I believe that due to IMU being the moon devil, that he or she will be able to control the waves in order to disable Devil Fruit users' abilities and also so they can conduct a mass flooding. This is what I believe due to IMU having a garden inside of a chamber. I find it fairly odd that M has living organisms inside of this chamber. There were plants and also butterflies. As we know, water is basically the necessity of life. As Mu is the moon devil, we could believe that the Noah, a giant ship left at Fishman Island during the ancient kingdom times, so the Void Century, would have been used to evacuate an island. I have a feeling that Fishman Island was not under sea level to begin with, but IMU flooded Fishman Island and kidnapped the former Neptune before they could evacuate. There was not segregation before IMU's reign of power, so it would make sense for this to be the case. In Wano, we see that there was flooding of some sort underneath the inhabited area of Wano, where the ancient weapon Pluton is located. We don't know why it was flooded or how, but I believe IMU had something to do with that. Being at war with the D and Ancient Kingdom, as we know, Nika has the ability of fire. As we see, Luffy creates the element with his red rock and other abilities that are similar. We also see, with the awakening of the Nika Devil Fruit, Luffy's hair looks very similar to a fire. Perhaps if Luffy's flame on the top of his head gets extinguished, his abilities begin to decrease in attack potency, being a direct counter to any fire that he creates. But perhaps the sun god's true power isn't fire, but magma, an ability that would allow the user to stop the water. When magma touches water, it turns the water into vapor. This is due to the magma being so hot that the rapid vaporization causes an explosive expansion in the water and allowing the magma to flow better. But water also causes the magma to solidify faster, which in turn could be used to create a wall of magma, and when the water comes, the impact creates a border. Thinking about it, this could have been how Pluton got sealed away under the Wano we see now. And perhaps this is the reason why, when Luffy first activated Gear 5th, his hair looked like dreads, or one could say magma dripping down. The Moon Devil could only be one individual, and that individual is, in fact, IMU, eclipsing the sun, not falling until the day that the sun god arises and rips the world from under Im's rule and liberates it once and for all. After 800 years, the sun god has risen, and now, after 800 years, the Moon Devil will fall.
So take me back to the old days, y'all said that I need that.